on the agenda, so that's great.
I just want to say hello to Alan Roge Yates. We worked together a bunch of years ago. Good to see you.
Hi, Rose.
Well, yeah, I'd prefer to have a few more committee members here. Hannah, did you get any RSVPs or issues with the meeting date or anything like that?
I did not. I know Alan literally sent me a 201 as I sent out the direct Zoom link that he needed the link, but he's obviously on. I did get one bounce back email just now. Where is it? I think just that Colette.
Oh, Colette, her email's bouncing? Oh.
No, just this one particular.
Robert, I did talk to Mike Muller this morning,
Yes.
so I know he's in, and I know he's planning.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, good. Someone else is coming on. Yeah, let's give everybody a few more minutes. Hopefully we'll get at least closer to a quorum. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, sorry I'm a minute or two late.
It's all right. We're waiting for folks, so that's great.
Mike Muller's on, so that's great.
I see that. Okay.
Here
Hi,
comes
Mike.
Roy.
Good to see you. And Roy, oh, good. Okay, Roy's here.
And I know I was on a meeting with Steve Olenoff yesterday on the MPO.
Mhm.
May I ask Mike a question unrelated to the agenda today?
I think that's a good use of time. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Of course.
I have a friend coming up from Maryland in October, and they were looking for a commuter schedule, I guess, to stay in Sharon. And what's posted is just still a winter spring. When will the fall be available?
The fall schedule won't change until the first week of November. We're going to do it after Halloween this year. So your friend from Maryland
Okay.
will still
one
use
that
the
he has
current
now is
schedule in
good.
October.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions too, so that's good.
I happen to be from Maryland, from Baltimore. Where's your friend coming from?
He's in Montgomery County.
I see.
Kensington or something?
More in the DC metro area.
Yeah, definitely.
Did Brian leave us? Is he staying for this meeting, Hannah? Do you know, or
I believe he is staying. He's probably, I think he's at the office.
trying to drum up members?
The
Yeah.
Wi-Fi. I
Okay.
see Isabella's on also from our office. Here's Brian coming back in. It's more than
Okay.
likely our Wi-Fi issue, which
Okay.
unfortunately we've had on and off.
Somebody jamming you?
Well,
So I have a feeling he's trying to head to a different room to see if that helps.
all right, we'll give folks a few more minutes and then we'll get underway.
Great.
In case there's anybody. How's things in Belmont, Roy? Everything good there?
Not a single complaint.
Okay, that's what I like to hear. All right.
Sorry, was there an agenda distributed for this meeting? Because somehow I
Yes, there is.
don't see one.
It's really just, it's about,
I'll put it in the chat link.
yeah, that's a good idea. We have minutes and then, presentation for MBTA Keolis on suicide and I presume, yeah, safety. So that's great. And that's the main focus. And then I'll put aside some time for discussing other matters that we talked about in the last meeting. So, but that's the gist of what we're doing today is my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well,
I'll put in the chat the link to the agenda just in case you don't have it.
All right. So I may have to do some. All right. So why don't we get underway because we've got all these folks here and I can see that we don't have a quorum. So I will just call this meeting, I guess, in into session without a quorum. And we'll move along, and hopefully other folks will be able to join us. We have from the advisory board, if I got myself, members of myself, Bruce, Roy, Alan. Is that any other members here? Brian, sorry, from Duxbury, yes. Okay, and so my understanding is per the, thank you for all the people from MBTA and Keolis for being here. This is and my understanding it's about commuter rail safety issues and an update. And thank you for doing this. Something I'd asked about some time ago, and I'm glad to see there's some follow-up. And then after that, we'll the members, we can kind of have a general discussion about future meetings and other items that we may want to take up. And one of the things we talked about at the last meeting, or two things that I recall we talked about, was the fiscal cliff discussion and the whole idea of regional rail. And there may have been some others, but we can get to that amongst the members after this. So without further ado, I guess oh, Greg has joined us. Thank you, Greg. Good to see you. Folks, put your names in the chat if you haven't done so already, please, to help us do the minutes. All right, so without that, who wants to start first here on the presentation?
I think Abdullah's going to start, and in the interest of the agenda, maybe Abdullah start with the suicide and rail safety portions, and then open it up for questions, and then if need be, then we can go back around and do some of the other just update slides that we prepared.
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't know you had, well, that makes sense to do an update, so sure.
Should we do the update first then? Just
Yeah, maybe you should do
that.
that, assuming it's going to be fairly brief. But,
It should be quick. Yes, thank you.
I
Great.
can go ahead and share the slides, guys.
Thank you very much.
I just need, Bruce, I just need permission to share the screen.
So Hannah, you are the host. You'll have to allow Alina to be a co-host to do that.
Thank you.
Or Isabella can do it. I had to vacate our office space because the internet wasn't working. So I can't do anything anymore. I'm just on my phone.
Sorry, I explained that. Unfortunately, that's the one disadvantage of the Wi-Fi. Great. Does anyone else need co-hosting abilities? We're good.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Okay. Do you hear me
Yes.
well?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So I think it will be a quick update. Usually we start by giving you an update on the operational performance. If we can go to the next slide, Alana, please. So you can see here that basically we track our on-time performance. Just as a reminder, the on-time performance where in train arrive at arrival within 4 minutes 59 seconds. If it is 5 minutes, it's late. So you look at the numbers since the last time we met. So the performance has continued to be good. We had a month that was slightly behind the others, which is June was below 90%. The 90% is a trigger. 9 out of 10 trains were on time. So and that 89.52 was due to some resilience and adjustment needed after the schedule that had been changed in May. So on the 20th of May, if you remember, we changed the schedule timetable by including the additional services on the Fairmont line, etc. So we've done all the tweaks, and that has created more constraints and more challenges, and we had some issues with some trains, meets of trains. So basically we made some adjustments, and we had also in June some challenges around train crew. All that made June to be slightly below 90%, and since then July and August have recovered. So overall, when you look at 2024, we are still above 92, which is a very good performance here. So that's, and the last figures are August, we were having 92.76% of the trains on time. So that still looks good. and it's back to where it is. But if you look ahead, because I'll give you a look ahead, the challenges for us in the next upcoming months, and I'm talking here about September, October, are mainly two things. One is the challenges we currently have because of the red line closure. We have the red line outage that basically we have all the commuters been advised to take the commuter rail, which impact the dwell time, the time, because we have some trains that leaves platform and they are full. So that is having an impact in September on the on-time performance. And looking ahead, the two other things that's coming are the haunted happenings events, Salem, which usually we do extra services that runs from North Station to Salem to take all the people that want to visit Salem. So this year we increase the level of services, additional trains, capacity to take these additional passengers, but that also has an impact on the on-time performance. So we will be seeing that in October, that then the end on the 31st of October. And maybe the third element I may mention, it's the fall. So we are now preparing for the fall season, the fact that we have some slippery rail caused by the leaves, and that will mean we'll have some challenges on the on-time performance. But that's what's coming up front. We look optimistic. We are prepared for it. We are preparing for it, but it's where we are on the on-time performance front. Any question? Okay. So if I may move then to the second topic, which is the ridership. So we continue seeing good numbers on the ridership recovery. If you look at this graph basically shows how we trend against pre-COVID level ridership. If you read it, basically you are looking at August, for example, you are looking like we are 96, 97% of the level of ridership of pre-COVID levels. So you can see the spikes and the downs are seasonal effect where you have summer month, etc. But the trend globally is going back to, we are closing the gap right now to the 100%. So hopefully by, I don't know, I will not guess, but I would just say we believe that in the first half of next year, by the latest, there is an element at the end of this year, we will be better or equal to the ridership levels that were on the commuter rail before the COVID-19 hit. So that's good news. I cannot show to you today how we perform against the other railroad. I think the numbers are from July, so I'm waiting on June. I'm waiting for the last update. Probably the next advisory board, I will be able to show you how MBTA trends against the other railroad. But if you remember last time, I think you saw the slide, we were trending better than any of the other commuter rail in the US. And I think it's still the case right now, but I'm waiting for the last figure from the national, the TEBES. So all in all, ridership continues steadily to get closer to 100%.
So Abdallah, and just to clarify, I think this is a different pattern of commuter, right? This is more off hours and weekend riders.
Yeah.
So this is in terms of how is this measured? Is this just rides or miles?
No, here are ridership. So basically, the ridership is counted by the conductors that are on train. They count the passengers and they then feed back to us, and we take those numbers into the system. So basically, we count manual count done by conductors. Sometimes adjusted across the year with some manual count, but it's the count coming from the people on board that count. So that's
so does it include partial? So if you get on one stop and get off earlier or in between, you're still committed?
You're still counted. Every trip is counted, no matter how short or long.
Okay.
And it's not an individual rider taking a round trip. So if you come into Boston and go back out, that's two.
Okay. Great.
So sorry, is this universe all trains, all routes, all times?
Yes.
This is the total, yeah.
Yeah, and you count it the same way as you always have, so the trend is
is reliable, consistent.
So the one thing I would say though, that these kind of trips are going to bring in less revenue than the former trips, right? Which were your commuter in and out of Boston, who's paying,
That's right. And that's partially driven by the significant increase in telework post-COVID. And what we've seen, to your point, Rob, is a decrease in monthly pass purchases. So if you have somebody who pre-pandemic was a 5-day-a-week commuter, most likely they were purchasing a monthly pass, which was a significant revenue source for the T. Now they might only be coming 2 or 3 days a week, and they're buying single ride tickets.
Yeah. So it's just a fact of the change in life, that the change in our world, that the fare revenue's also decreasing, even though ridership is recovering.
Revenue is recovering also, but you're exactly right that it's recovering at a lesser rate. So revenue is lagging ridership in recovery.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, but this, I guess it remains to be seen what happens in the falls, because is this comparing to some average in the same week before COVID?
Yes, in the corresponding period in 2019.
So if we're just looking, say, in a week in July, if historically a lot of people were on vacation, we might be seeing the same number of kind of vacation or leisure travelers in July, so that ratio could be high. But when you get back to a month like September, where the workforce is back, it could be that we drop back to something more like we're seeing in May here, where the level is more like 80%.
So it's possible that the trend that we've seen in the last several years is that there are 2 points in the calendar where we see pretty significant increases in ridership recovery, and that's post Labor Day and after January 1. And we think that has a lot to do with employers organizing their return to office activities and sort of telework flexibility changes around Labor Day and January 1. It also has a lot to do with schools. A significant number of our riders are students of all ages. And so you tend to see ridership spike again post Labor Day and January 1.
Yeah, that makes sense. But September will be a particularly interesting month then. I just wanted to ask you, is this pattern generally observed across all lines, or are there differences in the recovery rate across lines?
There's variation across lines. They're all increasing now, but for example, the Fairmount line, which is a historically lower ridership line in absolute numbers, as a percentage of pre-COVID ridership, owing to the increased frequency, it's around 130, 140% of the previous ridership. I think it's one of maybe 2 lines that are over 100% of pre-COVID ridership. There are some that are in the 70s, 80s, 90s, with some variation there.
Thanks. I see Stephen has his hand up. Go ahead, Steve.
When you ride the train, the conductor, sometimes they use their little device there to read your M ticket. They hold it there and it beeps. And other times, other conductors don't do that at all. For instance, yesterday I went in and the conductor was electronically reading everyone's M ticket. Coming out in the afternoon, he was just looking at everyone's ticket, M ticket. He didn't use that. Now, I was wondering why they do that sometimes and why they don't do it all the times. And does that in any way affect the accuracy of your count?
So it's the perfect question for the segue for the next slides, but I would just say no. So first, to answer your last question, no, the inconsistency in the behavior in some of the conductors doesn't affect the count, because the count is a different system, so you count manually, and it's more about checking tickets. That is another activity that needs to be done. But I'll tell you more about the fare collection and the activity of the conductors. So if we can go to the next slide, and fare collection. So just to give an update about how
Alan,
this
we'll do your question after this part of it, okay? You have a question?
All right.
Yeah, just hold on a second, we'll get to you. Sorry, go ahead, Abdel.
So just to explain a little bit of how the fare collection process works. on the train, okay? Each train has one head conductor that is responsible for the safety of the train, closing the door, etc., the flagging. And depending on the size of the train, of the consist, 6, 7 coaches, 5 coaches, you'll have 1 to 3 assistant conductors that will be there going through the train and checking tickets. Those conductors and assistant conductors evenly divide fare collection by the number of coaches. What they do, the conductors, and you can see the nice photo, they visually inspect the monthly pass and tickets. Tickets can be scanned electronically using the smartphone scanner they have with them that you saw, that you mentioned earlier. The single Charlie cards are inspected and punched using a ticket punch device, assuming they are valid, but this is very minor. And then the passenger, this is the difference between the transit, for example, it's passengers purchasing, they can purchase tickets on board, they can pay with cash or credit card, and the credit card purchases are scanned using, again, that smartphone scanner. It's called a SLED device. Upon the payment and the approval and the receipt, the SLED device will print tickets for the passenger, and then we'll give the ticket to the passenger that wants to buy the ticket on board. That process can take up to 1 minute. You can imagine that if one conductor is selling one ticket 1 minute, 1 minute, 2 minutes, then he doesn't necessarily have the time to check the other tickets in the coach. That's the challenge with that. That SLED device, and you can see it on the left-hand side, connects to a smartphone. That basically it's a mobile selling device. They were implemented in 2019 in Commuter Rail. Our big challenge with those devices are the quality internet connection, where it increased the turnaround time to collect and to charge ticket. But that has been resolved. But that's overall the process. And then I'll tell you in the next slide what we are doing to improve. And before you go there, we've been challenged, Keolis, by the MBTA, by Mike Muller here, by Philang, about improving the consistency of the fare collection by the conductors, because it's important to make sure everyone fare is collected. And to do so, we have developed and implemented few actions that you can see in the next slide. Sorry, Elena.
And I just want to talk a little bit about questions. I guess let's hold questions and comments to the end, just to keep things moving along here. If that's all right with everybody. Go ahead, Abdallah.
Okay, so just a reminder for any rider, fares can be purchased in the station, pre-tax through an employer, at the fare kiosks, on board the train with cash or credit card, and via the ticket app, the M ticket app. So below, you can see here the few things we've done over the last months to improve the fare collection. So first, we've increased the access to onboard sales equipment and improving its reliability. Now we don't need to wait for the Wi-Fi signals to come to be able, so we can process it. And when the device capture the internet, he can just process it afterwards. So we have reduced the length of the process of selling ticket independently of where the train is. So we have upgrade the technology to improve the processing time. Even the process has been reduced on the onboard sales. We have increased the number of passenger concierge in our station, notably because we wanted to give also technical assistance to the gates that has been installed at North Station, and I'll go to that in a minute. We have reinstated over the last 3 months now, 3-4 months now, since 3 months now, the fares check. So basically, we have our employees that are on the station at the beginning of the platform in Back Bay South Station, and they will check tickets of people trying to come to the platform. So we are checking the news before they come in the platform, which was quite successful in Back Bay. And we are also deploying additional assistant conductor. We've been doing that since August to have more conductors on board. And over the last more than 3 months now, for nearly 6 months, we have launched a mystery shopper. So basically incognito people that will go and try to spot where the checks are not done, and they will feed that back to the management for us to manage. Okay. And the last but not least, and I think I'm not sure you can see it on the screen, you can, yes, which is we are now progressing into the contactless payment. So our system doesn't take contactless payment, but that will make the process much faster. So, and we are 6 to 8 weeks away to be able to have contactless payment on board. That are the few things we've done. And just to reiterate on this topic, if you ask me about a number, and I'll give you a number from my head, but I think I have a graph, but it's whilst over the last 12 months, the ridership overall has increased by 10%. We moved from an 80% to an 85 to 95% ridership. So we've increased the ridership by 10%, when at the same time, we've increased by, I have the number there, 75% the number of people getting their ticket checks and scanned on board. So because we track that. So there is a massive effort in there, but I would take that comment saying that, yes, we still have here and there pockets of individuals, just to be completely transparent, that are up to do their work. And for that, we do the right management oversight, and we do the proceedings to make sure that it doesn't happen. Because you only need one conductor amongst the 350 to become like saying, "Oh, I didn't have my ticket been collected," and sometimes it's minor, but it's still there, and we need to tackle it. And it's what we are doing as a Keolis employer.
Okay. So, are we ready for some questions on Abdella's? This is all about ridership and fare collection. I know, who was it?
Sorry, I had the last slide on the fare collection.
Oh, okay.
So it's my last one. It's the fare gates, and I will stop here very quickly.
Sure.
So you can see the picture on the fare gates that has been installed in October 22 at North Station. So this new system, and you can see there are some numbers for you to know. That gates installed at North Station have made the onboard ticket sales going up by 38%. One reason being, if you know that you will not be able to go through the gate, you will buy your ticket on board before you leave the train. So that people think, they know they cannot go through the gate without valid tickets. The biggest topic and the biggest win of this is that the ticket activation, when you have an app, the MTK app, you can buy it, but you need to activate it. Till it's activated, it's where you basically, and the big issue we have, it's when people are coming to the trains with an MTK app, they're only activated when they know they will be checked, otherwise they don't activate it and save the ticket. So the fact that now they need an activation of the tickets before crossing the gate it's a real number here, increased the number of ticket activation by 70%. And just for information, we had 7 million successful transactions at the gates, just to say that the gates are working well and we have staff there. And there are plans that are supported and taken by the MBTA, which is installation of gates at South Station and Back Bay. That's the next step.
Great. All right. Thank you. And I know Alan's been, I think, waiting patiently to ask his question, so we can open up some questions. Alan, did you have a question?
I do, and I have two. On the ridership chart, I just interested in your observations of weekday versus weekends.
In
other words,
so
that was total service, the total week, I imagine.
Right. Abdella, I don't know if you have the number handy off the top of your head, but I know weekends are overperforming pre-pandemic. So weekends, we're seeing something like 150% of pre-pandemic ridership. Weekdays, I'm guessing it's around 90%. So you average the two together, or rather combine it in the aggregate, not average. In the aggregate, it's up around 95%.
The second part, just now looking at this picture at North Station, is what's the comparison of the north side ridership versus the south side?
About 1/3 of the ridership on the north side, 2/3
No,
of the
I'm talking about growth.
I know we know it on a line-by-line basis, Abdella. I don't know if you have that stat off the top of your head.
I'm just wondering if this ticketing program has helped, record and have fares paid at a higher percent then on the north side.
Oh,
versus
okay.
south
So
side.
again, this gets back to an earlier question that Abdullah answered. So the counting of riders is totally separate than the collection of revenue. So
I
we're not
understand that.
using gate transactions on the north side to count people.
And I know that's the way it's always been, going back decades. I'm just asking, as this fare gate, that maybe the question is the
Has
revenue.
it deterred ridership? Alan, is that what you're asking?
What's
Have
that?
the fare gates deterred ridership, like kept people from
No,
riding the
no,
train because they don't
no.
like?
Well, not deterred, probably just helped. Well, what's the difference? Okay, maybe deterred or is it helping to capture riders? Although you're saying the count is really on the train,
Right.
Right.
not any gates. But I'm curious then if you
Uh,
could break up the ridership that you presented by north side and south side. Same experience.
Okay, we can take it and get back to you with the
Okay.
numbers and the
Fine, thank
pre and post gate on the north side, and you can see. I don't
Great.
think I
All right,
would
thank you.
get back to you. So.
Bruce, you had a question?
Just need to unmute. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
So we're now at the point with ridership increase that we're running out of parking in Littleton. And so what that means is you won't be able to get commuters on the second two trains during rush hour because they can't park. Are there any plans to address that?
I can say that there's no immediate plans on the horizon. I mean, parking is a complicated issue on commuter rail and always has been. Often expanding parking requires acquiring more property.
I think there is property there. It's just but there needs to be a developer to do it.
Right.
I don't think that's an issue of property acquisition.
Well, it could be an issue of capital resources with the MBTA.
Yeah.
It's because the property itself has value, the development of the property. So the direct answer is there are no plans in the current capital program to expand parking facilities.
I guess the question I would ask is that if you're looking at improving ridership beyond where it is, it's not just Littleton, you may want to look at what the rate limiting factors are, and then you could figure out what the appropriate capital allocation should be. But it basically eliminates people who can't get to the train for the first two trains.
Right.
Yeah, Bruce, maybe there's something regional that can be done to provide a parking station through municipal or private owners. Because it's
there's a shuttle bus that you can take from the center of Harvard. We went ahead and did that on our own using MART, but that's only going to address a very small number of people.
Right.
The parking lot would because it's at Route 2 and 495.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It can handle people from all kinds of places, and it's a shame to put those trains to waste.
That's an important point. Yeah. So something that probably good if the T followed up, but the capital budget process is so cumbersome and years long that might be better if someone.
I mean, the original parking lot was built by a private developer, and they made enough money that they were willing to invest and do it themselves, and then the T bought it 4 years later.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's not bondable and financeable.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I bring it up because it just seems a shame.
Yeah, no, I think you got a good point, and hopefully we can get moving on that.
Because
the point you were touching on, and also Rob, I think what we do in a lot of these situations, and I've had lots of conversations with municipal stakeholders about parking, is look for opportunities to partner with the municipality, with the RTA, increase shuttle frequency, cross-subsidize tickets where possible for first mile, last mile services, encourage municipalities and other private owners to invest in additional lots that can be managed by others or even owned by other entities and managed by the MBTA. So there's a whole suite of solutions here that we explore when parking becomes a critical constraint.
It might make sense to talk to the Montechusett Regional Planning Agency, which kind of has the capacity to coordinate among the towns.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something like that, a regional.
And then they can probably organize a meeting And because I don't think any one town is going to say they're going to do this.
Right, and it's not
But-
in Littleton's interest, they probably don't care that much, but yeah.
Well, they do care because their residents can't get parking anymore.
Oh, well, there's a good point, yep.
And they also care because they're zoning for housing for that purpose. But there's no, the reality is any of the housing that we zone for, we pass the zoning thing, gets built, no one's gonna be able to drive to the station.
Right, well, thanks, Bruce, I think it's a good point,
Yeah.
we'll have to think about how to follow up on this, and kind of move ahead on that. Okay, any other question? Do you guys have, I just want to make sure I understand your presentations today, is that it for the update, or do you have other things before we get to safety, or?
I
No,
think
that-
that's up for the update, right? And then we're gonna talk about safety and
Okay.
trespassers.
Okay, well, go ahead then. Don't see any other questions.
Shall I, Mike?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with the slides that you have on these subjects, and our colleague at the MBTA, Rose Yates, is on the line as well, who's done a lot of work on the analysis and prevention of trespasser strikes in the system, and Rose can talk about some of the work we've done, but go ahead, Abdullah.
Okay, so I've tried more on the suicide prevention and trespasser strike that I was focusing more on that topic, but I think let's present the two elements that we are doing about this to try to reduce the likelihood. So the first thing is we have a partnership with a Lifesaver. The Operation Lifesaver is the national non-profit organization that is dedicated to saving lives. And they do free rail safety education presentation. They go to communities. So we are part of this since 2014, I believe, but I don't have the date there. So the Operation Lifesaver, they have programs in 47 states. And they are reaching out to 500,000 people annually in the US. So we, as Keolis, we are partners of Operation as MBTA Transit Police, and we are liaising with the Operation Lifesaver State Coordinator. This is supported by the FRA, the regulatory body, the TSA, local law enforcement, and other local safety officials from communities across the MBTA Commuter network. We have in Keolis 23 Operation Lifesaver authorized volunteers that we send to do awareness in locations, and it's not necessarily on stations. Sometimes it's in towns, and we do that. We did that with many like Gloucester. That comes to my mind, but we do that. So I think we have the next slide. We give you some element about what's coming with Operation Lifesaver. Alana, next slide. So some of the, I think we can share with you the leaflet. There is a leaflet that explains what it is, how it is, and we use that leaflet to be distributed on top of all the stuff during our events. So we will be using the Rail Safety Week, which is between the 23rd and 27th of September, to do some Operation Lifesaver activities on Wednesday, the 25th of September, Barnstable. So we are presenting at Community Center regarding the safety at crossings. Then on Thursday, the 26th, is some examples of what we are planning to do the next couple of weeks. Keolis, we are hosting an Operation Lifesaver outreach event at South Station between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. Then on Friday, we are hosting an outreach event at North Station between 3 and 6. It's just an examples of the next one coming in, but we regularly, I don't have the count of how many we've done the last 12 months, but we regularly do outreach event, reach the communities and explain the risks with the railroad. That's the first element that we do to try to reduce and to educate about the safety road to reduce the trespasser strike. Then we have another piece, which is probably close to my heart as the GM of Keolis, which is Samaritan. So Samaritan, for nearly 15 years, Samaritans, what they do is provide free and confidential life-saving suicide preventions service through the Greater Boston, Metro West, and across Massachusetts. We've partnered with them since 2014, but this year specifically, we go beyond that. So basically, we announced that we are expanding the partnership with Samaritans. They are the expert in suicide prevention. They have dozens of people responding to phone to prevent people to commit suicide, to go to not just on the railroad. So basically, we agreed with them, and we have a partnership that expanded now, that we will be using their expertise to basically train all of our frontline workers, locomotive engineers, conductors, people that are into stations. That will include some mental health awareness. And that training will give them the tools and the skill to identify and support a person in crisis. Because we've seen that people being on platform, behaving erratically, that are about to jump. So trying to detect early signs of those, because we had example in the past that we have been able to save lives, but because we reacted to some erratic behavior or people about to jump. So this training that is being currently developed, so they have begun to work. So basically what they did is they did various focus the workshops and interviews with our people, so the locomotive engineers, the people that literally are facing those people going trackside and trying to kill themselves. So they've interviewed our people. They try to understand what they do on the day-to-day basis, and from that they gathered all this information to basically customize the training for our people. So basically they will take their own training that they use for their people, the dozens of people that are responding to phone, avoiding people committing suicide, to develop it, to customize it to our frontline people, so which they are doing. And we are doing the first pilot of the training in a couple of weeks now. And then after that, we will train. It's a 12 months, 18 months program. We will start to train one by one. I mean, by group, all our frontline people. And here we are talking up to 900 people that will be trained. So that's for us the one of the highlights of what we do about trying to spot and avoid having people going trackside and commit suicide. So that's probably the two pieces I wanted to share with you about what we're doing specifically on those. Maybe I'll give the ground to Mike, to MBTA, to add on this, or...
Yep. Sounds good.
Well, before we go to Rose, maybe this is a good place to ask if there's any questions about this material at this point.
No, I think I'm interested to learn that there's actually contact between the trained personnel and the person before it actually happens, because most of us, I think that these are things where people go on to the tracks and there's no opportunity for contact. So that was interesting. No, I think that's great. I've also, I don't know if it's part of Rose's or this act, but I've noticed there's signs at commuter rail stations now about people need help. So I think that's
Yes.
good.
That is part of what Rose is going to talk about.
Yeah, so I think we could, any burning questions on this? If not, we can move on.
I guess the only thing I would add from our MBTA advisory board is if there's any resources that we can also share or put out. Like, so I know you said that you're going to be having some of like the events as part of Safety Week. I think that would be something great that maybe even members of our commuter rail committee would want to share with their communities and their commuters. So if you could maybe just share either links or PDFs that we can spread to our communities as well.
Yep, Hannah, I have a Dropbox of all the graphics that are for Rail Safety Week, and also some info on the events that I can email to you afterwards. If you'd do us the favor of sharing that with the group, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that could be part of our follow-up discussion as well, in terms of follow-up actions. But
great, and we can definitely incorporate that into our blog and onto our newsletter as well. Great. Thank you.
So now I'd like to introduce Rose Yates, who's an assistant general manager at the MBTA, and she does a lot of work specific to railroad safety, and some. She heads a committee. She chairs a committee, a cross-disciplinary committee that includes representation from regulators, municipalities, MassDOT, to look at instances of trespasser collisions on the right of way, and looks for data trends, and looks for opportunities to make improvements, and any kind of initiatives that could help address those issues. So Rose, please take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you all for having me here today. Doing this work has been, I feel, probably the most important work in my career, and I'm happy to share some of the things that I've learned over the last few years with you all regarding person-train collisions. So let me tell you a quick story about how sort of this committee came to be. It was back in August of 2017. Folks who work on the railroad are aware in the way that folks are usually close to situations of seriousness. We're aware that it seemed like the numbers of person-train collisions that summer were high. They seemed to be climbing. People were concerned. At that time, I was asked to sort of get my hands around the numbers, and then the situation kind of was elevated to leadership and then to the board. By the fall, we pulled together a group called the Commuter Rail Collision Reduction Committee. And folks on this committee, which I facilitate, are not only, when we're not insulated, it's not just MBTA and Keolis, but it's also folks from the Department of Public Health who work in the lead up the suicide prevention unit. It's folks from the FRA and folks from the Volpe Center, Transit Police, etc. And we all come together once a month, and we have religiously ever since October 2017 to figure this thing out the best we can. It is a complicated issue, intentional person-train collisions. Let me give you a little background information. Since 2017, I do all the data, right? So let me share that with you. Since 2017, we have had 152 person-train collisions. 86% of them, or 131, were fatal. 21, or 14%, were non-fatal. Of the 152 we've had, 80% were intentional. It's 121 incidents. Every single one of those families is traumatized for generations because of this. 5% of the 152 were true accidents. I'm riding a bike, I cross the tracks, I don't see the train coming. I have headphones on, I don't hear the horn. That kind of thing. 5%. That's 7 of the 152 person-train collisions. And 15% had related factors, which were either or homelessness or drugs and alcohol as related factors. Okay, let me just step back. Learned a lot in this process. One, things like homelessness and drugs and alcohol don't necessarily appear on a safety incident report. What's there is black and white, what the person did right before the collision, what the engineer saw, and what resulted. So when we started the committee, we didn't want to wait a year or a year and a half for the medical examiner to make a determination on whether some of these collisions were intentional or non-intentional, because we really wanted to get in there and do something about it if we could. So we decided that we were going to talk to the first responders, the people from Keolis, the people from the MBTA who actually drop what they're doing when there's a person-train collision and get there. And every single time there's a collision, we talk to them and we ask them these questions. What did you see? Did you see drugs or alcohol paraphernalia on the tracks? Is there a homeless encampment nearby? What was happening? And that information is what my committee uses to categorize these things. We're collecting information. The only people in Massachusetts who can decide whether something is intentional or not intentional is the medical examiner. I need to just say that. So what we're categorizing as intentional may or may not be ultimately what the medical examiner decides. But our goal, of course, is to get all the information as quickly as possible and do something if we can. If there's a fence and there was a hole in the fence, get the crew out there and fix it. And back to Abdella's, if there was someone pacing back and forth on a train station and they put their wallet on the platform and they took their watch off and their wedding ring and they put it on the platform, that's a huge red flag. If someone is at a station for a really long time watching trains come and go, going from the inbound to the outbound side, inbound, outbound, that's a huge red flag. And so there's so much. The more you know, the more you realize there's even more to know about this.
So Rose, I think now that you kind of like set the table about the work of the committee, I think it'd be good with the time that we have to pivot to some of the tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that we can do, that we've looked into doing, that we've tried to do, and where do we need help from partners?
Thank you, Mike. And so what are the things? Abdella's doing all the right things. Rail safety education, Operation Lifesaver. We also have online rail safety education that the MBTA produced. It's on YouTube. And it's available to anyone and everyone, and the link is also on our website. Mental health support services. We put up over 2,000 signs around the MBTA commuter rail system that have the 988, right? This is like a point of last resort. If you're at the edge of a platform, can you see a 988 sign and maybe reach out? We know that most often people choose intentional events in private locations. We put those 988 signs down the right of way in dark areas, in places where people might go to maybe potentially reach out. The QPR question, persuade, respond training that Abdella and Keolis are doing is all in line with what other transit agencies around the country are doing to try to curb person-train collisions. We also noticed in Boston that for a time, but sometime like between 2017 and maybe 2019, reporters in Boston were flying helicopters over the sites of person-train collisions, and you could see the gurney, you could see the white sheet over it. That is a very dangerous way to report person-train collisions. Scott Gabri, who's works for Volpe Center and is on our committee, he wrote responsible reporting guidelines that we used and provided to all of the Boston area reporters. They used them, and that has been a model nationally, and a lot of reporters nationally are using responsible reporting guidelines. We changed the way we communicate out to the public about person-train collisions. We wrote scripts for engineers who are on the trains that have just had an incident with a person. They're so nervous and upset themselves. What do they say? They have a script in their pocket to say that is responsible and respectful to everybody involved in the situation. All of these things help. We put reflective bollards up at each train crossing across Massachusetts so that a car doesn't accidentally take a turn onto the right of way. We look for patterns and locations, and we go out and we fix fences, and we do everything we can do. What can you do? If you don't have it on your town website yet, always have a link for Operation Lifesaver. Always have a message about being safe about trains and tracks. Always have your mental health services links right up there, right up front. These things people need. And one thing that we're hearing lately, and it's happening in California, homelessness is a big issue across this country. Do not push homeless groups to the tracks. I know that many cities and towns don't want to see this in their communities, but if you push them to the tracks, you're going to see an increase in person-train collisions and fatalities. a lot of homeless situations have impairment and drug and alcohol issues, which makes your judgment bad. So if you could help us by not doing that, that would be greatly appreciated. And the last thing I want to say is, and Mike and I are in agreement on this, as a transit agency, we're not legally bound to fence off the right of way, although we do it in many, many, many areas. And there's many factors involved in what gets fenced and what isn't. And we've talked about, we can't control people's mental health. We can't help make them get mental health. We can't stop people from taking drugs. But we can do what the Department of Public Health does, which is limit their means of suicide. For us, that's limiting a person's access to the right of way. And Mike and I have talked about this in our careers. Before we end, we would really love to see the MBTA system fenced off on both sides, not just with chain link fence, but with that steel fencing that you see around the airport. You can't cut it, you can't climb it. And that's kind of our mission, Mike, right? Wherever we can, however we do it, whatever money we can get our hands on, we want to do it. And let me just tell you what that costs. It's roughly $1 million a mile. And if you think about the right of way, you have to do it on both sides. That's big money. So we're looking for partners. We're looking for grants, ideas, any help that we can get to make it safer in our communities.
Thank you, Rose. Really appreciate that. Realizing we have very limited time left. Any questions or comments from the group?
Yeah, and thank you for that presentation, Rose. And it's good to know that, and Abdel, it's good to know that you folks are working on it. I appreciate your commitment to it. Questions from the committee or follow-up or comments from members? I'll say that if certainly appreciate the effort. And I have you in terms of the fencing. How do you approach that? Do you analyze impacts and trespassing situations and prioritize where you're going to put in physical barriers, and how comprehensive has that been?
We do look at trends where there are recurring instances of trespasser activity, not just trespasser collisions, but trespasser activity in general, and we target those areas. But it's not always so simple. We've gone in and put in a lot of chain link fence that's just been cut. It sometimes gets cut the same day or the next day if it's a high traffic area. We really do need the hardened fencing, the steel fencing. And then other times there's jurisdictional issues. Sometimes the butters don't like or want the fencing, and then also fencing, needs maintenance. Sometimes it gets graffiti, sometimes it gets vandalized, sometimes it becomes unsightly and an eyesore. In addition to, it's almost like a double-edged problem. Rose is right that we'd like to fence off the whole right of way, but I can also tell you that the number one constituent complaint that I get every single week from some municipality or another is about going and addressing some issue with some fence somewhere.
What do you mean, fixing it or
fixing it, replacing it, removing graffiti and vandalism?
Well, what if if a member has an idea, has a thought, is it Rose? Can we email Rose and say, look, we think there should be a fence here, or what are the kinds of? I know from my own town we've had, at least as far as I know, two suicides, and I think they were both in the same area. I actually don't know how good the fencing is there, or if anybody's reviewed it. So, so if somebody has a question, or has a suggestion, is there a contact for that?
So, Robert, yes, I'd be happy to take that information, but can I also challenge you to also think about price and how, if we're talking chain link fence, it's sort of a Band-Aid on the problem, and we will do that. Absolutely. If there's two incidents in the same area. Sure. Are you Ashland? Are you from Ashland?
Yeah.
Okay, so Fountain Street Bridge, you must be
Right.
talking about, yes. There's a fence there, you can get over it. We went and fixed it several times. I know about those 2 incidents.
Okay.
And yes.
Okay,
But
thank
I also challenge everybody to kind of look inside their towns and cities and help us do this thing.
Okay, appreciate it. Greg? You had a
Perhaps we should ask our Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities as part of their MBTA stuff, because a lot of our towns are now addressing that the fencing issue, because we are putting people right on the tracks, perhaps the developers who are getting significant density bonuses assist with the fencing.
That would be incredibly, incredibly helpful.
And that's a good thing, like the planning boards can try to address that if it's, I think, if it's near the site, right? So.
If you could start to bake it into development.
So
well, on our zoning, like in my case, we do not have any tracks in Marshfield. We are about 2 miles from Greenbush.
Yeah.
But I put in on ours, and our friends at the state did not take it out of my draft language, that they had to provide either car services or money for the GATRA shuttle to run up to Greenbush. And that's another thing people should think of. But sometimes I think there's ways when we're writing legislation and when the towns are enacting zoning changes that we should always keep in mind, what do we have to address? And this is clearly something that we should address.
Thank you. So one thing so information sharing, Rose, so you guys are meeting every month. Have there been past reports? I know the Volpe Center did something. Have you given out reports? And is that something? Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, do I have time to just tell them this little bit? Okay, so there's this, we have a rail suicide psychologist on our team from the Volpe Center. There's this concept called the Werther effect, right? The Werther effect is if you talk about rail train suicide, it could increase the incidence of rail train suicide. So you probably know about this committee because we've been sort of quietly working behind the scenes. Our intent is do no harm. So we don't put out a public report. Our goal is hopefulness, not hopelessness. So we push mental health service information on the system. We do things that Abdullah mentioned and all of that positive stuff, but we don't report on suicide, nor.
I think, and there is a kind of inherent, I appreciate that. There's an inherent conflict there though between
it is.
Public officials knowing what's going on and an analysis of what's going on and publicizing it. And so I think that's where
right. So the Department of Public Health does put out their suicide report. Understand that their information is 1.5 years behind every incident. And rail suicide is in this little group called Other, which is about 3% of all intentional fatalities. That's where rail suicide is in terms of the overall picture of Massachusetts suicides. But we're in there.
Yeah, okay.
That's
the thing, and the other we haven't had time to talk about is just general safety and the accidents and things like that. So I guess, to go back to Hannah's point about getting us information, do you have like a best practices or a set of the links that you think we as advisory board members should be, say, bringing back to the select boards or city councils or that kind of thing?
100%. I'd be delighted. There's a toolbox that the FRA has that I'll share the link with you all.
Great.
And I think that will help you from all facets of this complicated issue.
Great.
Yeah, and I think, Rob, even if we want to have like Rose and the team back again, I think that might be helpful in terms of like just context for members.
Sure.
I did have one quick question. What is your relationship like with Amtrak? So for example, the Providence line runs Amtrak and Keolis. And then like on the North Shore as well, like with the Downeaster Amtrak service. So is your relationship in terms of safety the same, like in terms of also the funding for like the fences, let's say?
So if it's territory that Amtrak is responsible for maintaining, they're also responsible for the fencing. I would say on the Northeast Corridor, where they operate Acela trains at upwards of 150 miles an
Yeah.
hour, most of that territory is fenced off and grade separated. That's not the case on the north side where the Downeaster operates through pretty residential neighborhoods, and they're operating on MBTA territory as a contract operator.
That's another complication.
Yeah, I mean, I know I live along the Providence line, and I know Mansfield and Sharon have had incidents of suicide. Mansfield in particular comes to mind because I know they had to redesign their whole area. And Sharon, most recently, it was an Amtrak versus person, but then it affected the whole commuter rail line and the whole sort of system. So it's good to hear in terms of just the cross coordination. But I think that also, even as like an advisory board, it's important that there is that continuation of like the conversations. And again, just I think providing the resources to all the different towns that we represent is helpful.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Rose and Mike and Abdella for the presentation. I think we can let you folks go if there's no further questions or comments, and we can complete the rest of our meeting. But thanks as ever for coming in, and we'll see you guys hopefully quarterly or sometime soon. All right, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Yeah. Thanks. So I'm not intending to do minutes today because we don't have a quorum. That's okay with everybody. But I did want to, we should put aside time for upcoming topics and next meeting dates. I had just what we talked about before was the fiscal cliff and educating our boards, relative boards on that, and regional rail. You know, I think this thing about the Littleton parking lot, I think is an important topic. We should try to put aside maybe some way of advising Bruce on that. But are there other burning topics that people wanted to put on our agenda? I know we have the quarterly updates, which are very important. Is there other items that that we should discuss?
So let's not forget my idea of changing the name of this committee.
Yes. Well, I put that under the subs of the regional rail discussion. So
Yeah,
we'll have to
okay.
go back to the full committee with that one. But I think, you know, it's interesting. I don't know. There was an interesting presentation about intercity rail. There's apparently a whole bureaucracy involved with intercity rail that I wasn't quite aware of. And they're pretty active. But so, Hannah, what were you thinking in terms of future meetings, or what do we have set up now?
So right now, if we keep to our standard once a month, the next meeting would be Thursday, October 10th at
Yeah.
2 p.m. That day, there is also, I believe, a Boston MPO meeting at 10 a.m. for anyone that typically is interested in Boston MPO stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
But
so that might be a tough time.
yeah, so I mean, it definitely is enough time if you want to continue with the once a month. That same week,
Yeah.
there's also hopefully going to be a climate committee meeting happening like on the 9th, I think that day. They're going to do MAPC is putting out I think a climate report joint like with MBTA. So hopefully that committee, for anyone that's interested, the climate committee
So
will meet
maybe we
that
should
week.
think about how to skip, because you know we're not getting much attendance here.
Right.
So, you know, maybe we should put out. Well, I think there's a couple.
If we jump to November, right now it's November 14th.
That a
which
good
is a
date?
Thursday. That though is also the same day. Again, the Boston MPO has their annual meeting. So I'm not sure how many of you
So let's pick another,
that would
I
be
mean, there
me.
must be
pay
other.
attention to MPO meetings.
Yeah.
Yes,
Or
so can I just say on the MPO meetings, some of them are live in Boston and some are
so
online.
the one on November 14th is going to be the in-person big annual
Yeah.
meeting. So we
So-
probably don't want to have our commuter rail committee meeting on the
Well, let's,
same date.
Do we have like,
be
so this is a Thursday, we traditionally pick the Thursday, I mean, there are other days available, like what's our?
I think Brian and I are always open in terms of our office, with what works for you.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think when I first joined, back in July, we did meet once on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't have any.
So I don't know if like Wednesdays typically work
Well, maybe
better.
we should, I think we should survey the members. I don't know if, so
Okay.
one thing I'd want to know, there's like, what I counted was like 19 members. And we have
Right.
1, 2, 3,
When we look at the
5,
listing,
6, yeah.
I pulled
Yeah,
up the
there's like
committee.
6 here today. I mean.
Yeah, so I did pull up the commuter rail committee, which Isabella, who's on the call, as part of our staff, she's also done a really great job with just maintaining our contacts.
Yeah.
So just really quickly, I just want to very briefly list off. So it's Abington, Ashland, Belmont, Bridgewater, Brockton, Bourne, Canton, Duxbury, Harvard, Hanson, Lakeville, Marblehead, Marshfield, Maynard, Norfolk, Wellesley, West Bridgewater, Westwood, and Worcester.
Sure.
So of those, I mean, there's probably about 5 or 6 of you, I think, that are very active and engaged.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe first thing we should survey the members and say, hey, are you interested in coming to meetings? If not, let us know. So I don't know that statutorily we need to have a certain number or not, but we're not getting quorum, so we can need to think about that. And maybe it's a question, look, do you guys want to commit, do you want to commit to coming to meetings, or is there a problem with the meeting times? Maybe we could do some sort of Google, what's that thing, a meeting invite where people pick when they can come. Because I'd like to get more membership involved or reduce the size of the committee so that we have a quorum and, can act on it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And also schedule wise, in December, that's when we'll have like our big like quarterly meeting in terms of bringing together the full advisory board as of now. So I think that is going to be a hold as of now. It looks like probably December 17th, give or take.
Well, maybe we should look at, I don't know what people, what do the rest of you folks think, but should we look at like late October, early November timeframe for a meeting, or should we maybe do a survey of the members, who's available for certain days or times? I'm trying to figure out how to get more attendance here, and then, figure out, get our agenda item together. Quarterly update's great. There are other, we have this whole question of the intercity rail and maybe, I mean, I'm thinking about the fiscal cliff is kind of a bigger topic than this committee. But maybe we should join in as members of the advisory board to work with that. So I don't know if that's just, but what are you guys, other members here got suggestions or thoughts?
So I think it's not as important as when we have the meeting as what day of the week and time. For me, avoiding MPO meetings and MAPC meetings would be important because some of them are meeting live, and that would be impossible for me to get back for a Zoom meeting. When they're not, but see, you don't always know for sure whether it's live or not. So doing it way in advance is a problem. So the best thing is just avoid that conflict.
Okay, and so
could we look into November 6th or 7th? November 7th is a Thursday, and that avoids those MPO and MAPC conflicts.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Those dates right now are pretty much wide open. And then again, I think the other question for the committee as a whole is, does 2 p.m. work, or should we shift it to earlier in the day.
I think my feeling is
Probably
10
wouldn't go
o'clock.
much later for members.
No. Yeah, we want to maybe think about 10 o'clock. What do people, is that better for people? That's also a popular meeting time though. So that's why we ended up at 2, I think.
Right.
But, yeah.
2 actually works better for me because in the mornings I typically have meetings.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, so well, let's stick with 2 and see. Maybe that somehow we can get it. Hannah, what do you think about trying to survey the members and saying, hey, do you want to come? And because we do need quorums. And if you want to resign, that's fine, or just be an informal member, that's great. And
I actually think a number of people just informally, when we, separated out again and stuff, said, hey, I want to keep an eye on what's going on. I don't think they were thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that you're probably gonna need a vote of the whole board to change unless they resign. But I think you could have a status where a community could choose to be an observer.
Yeah.
And but not a member,
or we
and
could
then
just
they don't count.
continue without, we could continue without taking formal action in terms.
Well, you could
No,
just have
the
them-
observer wouldn't count towards
No,
quorum.
that's
and
what I
then-
mean, but if we don't do that. So, I mean, we could institute a rule, if you don't come like 3 or 4 times in a row, that, we're gonna ask you to resign or something, I don't, but.
But I
Right.
think
And
I think it's fair to send them an email out asking people if the time of day is interfering with their attendance.
Yeah. That would be.
Right.
Because it might be that there are some people who, and it may not be the people on this call. This reminds me of when they did the survey of when they should run the express train. They had a hearing at 4 in the afternoon, and the only people who could make it to the meeting were the people who wanted the early express train.
Right.
But so I think you may want to ask, maybe people could attend if it was at 4 o'clock. I don't know if that works for the people here, but
Yeah, all right, well, so Hannah, do you think you could design something and just kind of work on this, see if we can get a good date and time, and see if we could encourage, say, look, if you don't think you can continue to come, resign, or would be a different meet, let them know that we've had the last 2 meetings without a quorum, so.
Right.
Doesn't
I think that's a great idea. And then the other question is if you want to stick to every single month leading into the December annual
Probably.
board
Maybe that
meeting,
could
or
be,
if we want to stick to, as of now, technically it's October 10th at 2 p.m. And then I like the idea of shifting the November meeting, or maybe we don't meet in November.
I was thinking we should, I think, why don't we look at, forget the October and go to early November and see how that works out. I mean.
Okay.
And then,
Happy to do
then
that,
maybe
and
on
then-
a 2 or 3 month basis, depending on.
Yeah, I mean, and we don't have to be every single month, although I do think, like today's presentation, it would have been great if there were more people, because I do think it was very comprehensive. And I think Isabella and I will try to get as much of the presentation or the information up on our website and out on the blog, because those are great resources. And then in terms of like meeting agenda topics, if anyone has, like big topics or wants certain presentations, please like reach out to Rob and myself. I know we're in regular communication if there's major things that come up.
Yeah.
Doesn't Brian
So,
poll the memberships every year, the advisory board members in whole, asking what committees they want to participate?
Yes. So I remember when
Right.
So when I first joined the advisory board as the town rep, I think just got like slotted into, here's the committees that typically Sharon had been represented on. And then I think people also sometimes do sign up for if they want to get more active or more involved. And Isabella also had reached out to all of the new elected officials, and we had sent out over the summer letters to everyone and to basically say, who is your designee? So those have definitely been rolling into our office. They still continue to roll in from either town administrators or city councils. So we're definitely seeing some new members pop up as well.
So I think we ought to choose a general date for the meetings, like I know it's the first Wednesday of the month. seems to be, there's no interference from MAPC or MPO and things like that. So
Right.
that,
That's true, yeah.
and so if we establish that as that would be the date, if we miss a month, fine, but we should just establish some.
So you think it'd be better to have a regular first Wednesday of the month kind of thing?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I probably couldn't make 2 o'clock then.
But then we can agree on the time, whatever, because I'm,
I don't know, well, what, should we just
Okay.
schedule for the early November though, as the next meeting, and we agreed on that? We're gonna skip over October and go to early November?
So
Better.
would you want to do the Thursday, November 7th in lieu of the Thursday, November 14th?
That's good with me.
I like,
Does
That works
work
for me.
All right, so why don't we do that? And then meanwhile, Hannah will be in touch with the committee members to kind of talk about the days and the times and see what people, see what people's issues are and kind of encourage them to come. If not, to let us know. So we could maybe reduce the membership or whatever. I don't know if people will do that, but kind of got to get a handle on it. And I think Alan's point, at some point every year we reappoint people, right? Is that coming up soon or? I don't remember.
Don't know offhand, given I'm fairly new.
So we just got to keep that in mind, and maybe before we reappoint people, we ask them about, attending meetings or issues attending meetings. So just try to,
Great.
let's get out, maybe we should do more reminders to people and say, hey, meeting coming up next week, you guys coming or so,
Right.
which I know you already did, so.
So yeah, so as of now, I have a hold on my calendar. I don't think we've sent it out to the full advisory board yet. But hopefully the date will be December 17th for the MBTA board annual general meeting.
That's a big
like
one,
that. So hopefully that'll still be the date, because I know that was something I was talking about with Brian in terms of scheduling meetings, now until the end of the year, really, and just trying to plan things out.
Yeah.
And
What was
like
the date again?
as of now, I have it blocked off as December 17th at 10 a.m.
This is the full board meeting.
MBTA Advisory Board Annual General Meeting.
Okay.
What month did you say, December?
Yes,
Okay.
December.
December. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right now I have listed for this committee. No, for climate. I have
Climate committee is as of now, I think I have to send it out, but it looks like climate committee will be October 9th, hopefully.
Okay. All right, well, I think that's, I'm just gonna say, it's probably all we have time for today.
So we're gonna skip October
I
10th.
think so. We're looking at that November 7th date we talked. Was
Okay.
it whatever date you just said, I checked.
Perfect.
Is that at 2 o'clock?
As of now, it'll be
As of
2
now, so
o'clock.
let's think about, Hannah's
Um,
gonna do some emailing to, see what people's issues are and see if they can confirm for this meeting, and then if there's issues, we have time to reschedule, right? So, or at least try to reschedule.
Right.
Okay, and then we should all think about, Hannah, when you're at the, think about, I don't know if you draft agenda items that people want to talk about. I have the whole regional rail question, I think, and are there other things? One of the things I think we should put Bruce's, just for discussion if we have time, the whole question about how to add parking, it seems like a crucial question, and, is there a kind of things we can do? That's what I have. So other people have other things. Get it into Hannah, and we'll see if we can at least put an agenda in place before we meet.
And as part of the
Hannah, the question I had, because I don't just think it's a Littleton question. Littleton's an example of it. There are a couple of major parking hubs. And I imagine there's someone at the T that knows what they are and knows the ones that are at capacity and could, identify which ones are capable of expansion and which ones are not, and at least they get on a priority list. I'm not sure there's a whole lot more, and we can talk about it as a committee, but if the MBTA itself isn't going to actually do the homework, there's not much we can do.
Yeah, All right, well, let's think about that as how we would address that. Maybe Hannah, if you get some information on that before the next meeting, we can.
And
Perfect.
part of the solution to that also, you always should consider is shuttle bus service as a
Well,
way, an
we-
easy way. Now, it's because then it solves all sorts of problems, just for the community in general and for getting people to and from the railroad station.
The
Not to mention
challenge is
climate
that,
change.
yeah, the challenge is that, we've done the shuttle bus service, and that solves the problem for the few people that can get to the shuttle bus. But this Littleton, and I suspect the other big ones like that, draw from multiple communities
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
feed in. So it's not one shuttle bus. It's like you'd need 16
Well,
shuttle
you're on
buses.
495, and I mean, you're on Route 2 and
Yeah.
495.
And
That's a big
495,
deal.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a big deal. All right, so I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna have to adjourn this meeting. I gotta go, but let's all think about stuff, and thank you guys for coming, and Hannah and Isabella. Thank you for helping us run this thing, or running this thing for us, I should say. And so we'll be in touch. All right. So, and Hannah, you and I should probably just follow up at some point fairly
That would be
soon.
awesome, Rob. Definitely feel free to email me and we can set up a time that works.
Great. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Well,
everybody.
everyone take care. Thank you so much.
All right.